Welcome everyone to episode 3 of Seek, Search, Succeed, a podcast dedicated to helping sales enablement pros who are transitioning to new roles. Today, we're joined by Caroline Maloney, live in the Fiber Cove in Austin, Texas. Caroline, thanks for joining.
It's so good to be here. I love this place.
Yeah, we've had a good time getting this all set up today. Mm-hmm. So you're a sales enablement practitioner at Redis. You're the host of the Enablers podcast. You have an ebook out right now. Mm-hmm. And you're just an all-around badass. So before we jump in today, I want to talk about, first of all, how you ended up in enablement, because you have a really cool, unique story. I want to talk about LinkedIn tips for our people that are watching this, trying to find new roles. You did a really nice job building your LinkedIn brand, and that was how we originally met, so I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about your ebook a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But first, before we get into all that good stuff, I have to know, I'm on episode 3 of Seek, Search, Succeed. You're on episode 17 or 18 of the Enablers. What are your best tips for people that are recording or starting a podcast? Like, what can I do better?
Oh my gosh, you have it way more together than... I mean, Morgan and I, we love what we do. We are by no means professionals, and I think that it's really just a passion project for us. We never had any goals, really. We never had any, we want this podcast to be on this platform or whatever. We just are really close friends, and we decided we should take our ramblings and record them with other people. So I would say for anyone who's starting a podcast, or just advice for anyone who has a podcast, get on a platform, because when we were just recording on Zoom and stuff, when we didn't have some sort of an editor or anything like that, we would lose recordings, stuff would happen. So when we switched to Riverside, everything got better. Riverside's a really great platform. The other platform I'd recommend looking into is Descript. I don't know if you've heard of it. No. It's amazing. It's more for the editing stuff, so if you have someone editing your podcast, you probably don't need it, but it's a really fantastic platform. It's $11 a month or something, so it's not too bad. So yeah, I would just recommend getting on a platform or platforms that you love and trust. And I would also recommend just letting the conversation flow. I know a lot of people come into podcasts and they're okay, I need this person to, I need to just manipulate it and stuff. Yeah. Have your topics, have your 3 to 5 topics, but let the conversation go where it goes. Morgan and I have had so many interviews where the conversation's gone way out into left field, and people have been that was your best episode, and we're love it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because I've only ever done webinars. My background to do this was just webinar stuff I've done. Mm-hmm. And I have just you have 30 questions prepared for the webinar, because it's more of an interview than it is a conversation. Right. So that's kind of what I've brought to this. So this is my first episode. I just have a couple topics. So this episode's really short. You guys know what happened, or if it goes really well, it's because of that. So let's talk about how you got into enablement. I was asking you before this if you get nervous before you record things. I still get a little nervous. I have my pre-routine rituals. And you were I don't get nervous. I'm a professional actor. Yeah. So tell people a little bit about your background and how you got into enablement.
Yeah. So I was a professional actress for over a decade before I broke into tech. I'm only 27, so that really means that I was a professional actress since the time I could basically walk and run. Yeah. But what that means for me is that I dedicated most of my life to being in TV, movies, on stage, and the pursuit of all of that. And that's a lot. It's a full-time job to audition and be in shows and be a performer. And when I left college my senior year to move to New York and really start to pursue acting professionally, I realized that the passion for it in the real world wasn't as strong as the passion was in school. I majored in acting in college. I went to performing arts high school. And so I was kind of I love this so much, but I don't think I want this to be my full-time job. I don't think I love it enough for it to be my full-time job. And I don't think I love it enough to be broke, as broke as I am.
Because we all have this, romantic vision of, Joey from Friends. Yeah. He was, the starving actor, but his life was still great. But it's a show. It's not real.
No.
What is it like living in New York? I think so many people probably idolize out. I want to live in New York. Mm-hmm. I want to be in movies or in video or whatever it might be. It's such a romantic experience. What's the real life of that like? Is it just tough like anywhere else? There's no money?
New York is, I think it's either the most expensive city in the country or the second most expensive city in the country. Either way, it's fucking expensive. Yeah. And the thing about New York is that there's so much, there's so much glitz and glamour. There's so many incredible things that you can do, but only if you have money. there are a lot of things that you can do and that you can enjoy in New York if you're broke, but you're always going to be on the outside looking in if you can't afford your lifestyle, if you can't afford the things you want to do. Like, think about, like, all the shows in New York, the culture, the art, the food, the music. You need money to kind of enjoy all of those things.
Yeah.
So I was living in New York, and I was in my early 20s, and I was like, dude, I am broke. I can't afford any of the nice things that this city has to offer. I can barely afford my subway pass, and the subway sucks.
Yeah, I've been like, it's not great.
It's not fun. And so at one point I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to get a steady job, and then I can consider adding acting back on. And so I think it was my older brother at the time who was the first person who told me that I should break into sales. And he was basically just like, you should look at a job in sales because it combines all of the things that you're kind of naturally good at. And you can make a lot of money as a salesperson. Yeah. Like, commission is, a decent pay structure. And so I got on this website called Wellfound, formerly Angel List.
Okay.
And it's like it's just tech startups. It's just like a greenhouse for tech startups, basically. Or Glassdoor. What's the job platform? Greenhouse? It's Greenhouse, right?
There's Glassdoor, there's like reviews.
Right.
For like, I think of like Indeed or Monster. There's a few big ones. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like the Indeed of startups. And I looked around for like a week. I remember at the time I was living with two other girls who were professional actresses, and they were kind of, they were like, you're not gonna like this. Like, you're gonna want to come back to acting.
What are you gonna do in sales?
Exactly.
It sounds terrible when you say it out loud. I'm done living this amazing life. I'm gonna go work in sales for a
right.
little bit.
Exactly. They were like, what are you gonna do? And I finally I had several interviews for tech startups for an SDR role. At the time, I didn't know what that meant. Mm-hmm. I just knew that it was entry level, and it seemed to be, at the time, $35K a year, I was like, holy crap, that would be amazing. That was just the base that I was making when I was an SDR. Which is nothing in New York. I just want to be clear.
I started in used car sales, where we had no base pay. It was 100% commission.
Wow.
So when I got my first SDR job, I was like, you're going to pay me money to come here?
Yeah.
And there's a fridge full of water I have to pay for? Like, I had quarter vending machines at this car dealer lot. So,
oh my gosh,
it looks glamorous coming from other industries.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And the fridge fully stocked. Like, I have healthcare.
We had, Fruit Loops and stuff in the morning, and Cinnamon Toast Crunch was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was just lucky. I was happy for anything at that point. I was like, a consistent salary is amazing. Unlimited PTO, unreal. Like, I was so excited. So I started working at B12 Web Design, and I made a lot in commission because I was a top salesperson there. And so I was an SDR for about a year and a half, and then I was promoted to be an account executive. Okay. Now, the closing side of things I didn't like so much.
Why not?
I missed prospecting, and we really just didn't prospect as much.
You missed prospecting? No one misses prospecting.
I missed, to be honest, I missed the amount of money I made as an SDR.
Yeah.
Because it was more than what I made.
If you're good at it, it's a hard thing to be good at, to be great at. Mm-hmm. So if you are great at it, you can make a lot of money.
And the thing is, I made way more money as an SDR than I did in the few short months that I was an AE, because I just was better at the prospecting side of things than I was at the closing side of things, because I still had so much discovery laced into my closing tactics and not enough closing laced into
it takes a longer, depending on what the deal cycle is, it takes a while. So first 6 months in AE, you might not really have any big successes, and it's hard to be like, man, how much longer do I do this?
Right.
Hope I do something right and get that gratification that you can get pretty quickly in sales development just by doing the right things quickly there.
Exactly. And so I was kind of like, to be honest, I'm making good money, and I was making a lot of money as an SDR. It still wasn't enough to keep up with New York, you know?
Yeah.
And so at the time, another company called LeadSpace, a recruiter from that company had reached out to me, and they were like, hey, would you be interested in coming and building the sales development team here? And I was like, building it? Yeah. What? And I was a team lead, so kind of like a player coach role. And so I worked at LeadSpace for a little under a year, and it just wasn't the right fit. I loved the team that I worked with. And I loved building the team and hiring people. I was responsible for hiring, training. I built the inbound function. I built all of the cadences and campaigns and plays. I built the playbook. I literally built the whole SDR function.
You're doing SDR enablement at this point, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at this point, by the way, I find it interesting to note, I didn't know what enablement was.
Yeah, so this enablement wasn't really even a thing a big thing.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, was like training, or you were
Yeah.
a team lead that kind of did some of this stuff, or a subject matter expert.
Mm-hmm.
There was no like assigned role for you. Even though it was happening in all these different companies.
Well, the thing is, I think it was a thing at some companies. Like my boss, for instance, Jerry, he was the first enablement hire at Outreach, and he ran the enablement team for years there.
Yeah.
So he was doing that at this time. So it was was a thing at some companies, but not a lot of companies were investing in it, I think was the problem.
Yeah, and I think Jerry like started the Sales Enablement Society here in Austin.
Yeah.
He's OG in sales enablement.
Yeah,
so.
he's kind of famous in this
Yeah,
space.
for sure.
I'm very lucky to work for him. Jerry, I love you. So I was like building the team, doing all this stuff, and I was like so burnt out because when you carry a bag and you do all of that, it's like, so I will never forget the core girls that made up that team, Sherry, Libby, and Danae, phenomenal women, and they helped me so much. They were such key players. But it was still a burnout situation where I was doing too much. Classic startup fashion.
Yeah,
I was wearing a million hats.
Anything you can do in a startup, they're like, yeah, if you can do that, we'll let you try.
Do it,
And
yeah.
then you have 10 things you're doing. It's crazy.
I think that like the biggest lesson I learned, just as an aside from that experience, is if you're gonna give feedback, give specific, meaningful feedback. I had a lot of instances at that job, in that role, where I was writing sequences, cadences, whatever you call it, for the first time. And I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I was used to having my manager write that stuff for me, or like the training department or whatever. And so I would get a lot of feedback that would just be like, this isn't good. No, I don't like this. This isn't good. And I'm like, hey, like, I need, like...
What can I do to make it better? Yeah,
what can I
a little
do?
more.
And so it really helped me understand that you need specific feedback. If you're going to give someone critique or criticism, you really need to be specific about it. And that happened a lot in that role, which is one of the reasons it just wasn't, like, the best fit for me, really. I didn't feel like I was really learning a whole lot, although I did work for two incredible gentlemen, Jim and Tori, who were fantastic. They always gave me amazing feedback.
We're doing so many shout-outs.
I know.
expect all these people to watch this.
I know, this is my secret way of being
This is
like, I
fun.
shouted you out.
Yeah.
But Jim and Tori were amazing. They always gave me amazing feedback. They were great leaders. But it just, at that company, in that role, I felt it was a little bit too, like, undefined, so to speak. And I was kind of like, okay, like, I really need to be in a company, in a role where I have a boss, a clear career path, and, like, all of those things that I had a lot of those things at LeadSpace, but I needed more from what I was missing.
And at this point, are you still in New York, or how did you get to Austin?
No, oh my gosh. So at this point, I'm literally insane. Like, you're gonna die when I tell you what my whole like, moving path has been. So when COVID started, I moved out of New York. My best friend,
Smart
Elena,
move.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally I lived in an apartment the size of this room, so I was like, I need to leave. My best friend, Elena, and I moved to her parents' vacation home in the Pocono Mountains for 3 months.
That's pretty cool.
It was like a kid colony. There were no adults. It was just kids migrating to their parents' vacation homes. So fun. And it was there that I decided to move to Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
So I rented a car and drove across the country and moved to Portland, Oregon. Had so much fun. I was in Portland when I worked at LeadSpace.
Okay.
And I have to say, like, I'm really proud of myself for taking that leap, like leaving B12, leaving that steady career of being a salesperson, making good money. Like, I was really nervous about making the jump to leadership and enablement, even though it wasn't really enablement at the time. So anyway, I worked at LeadSpace for about a year, and then I was recruited to join a company called Science. I'm going to do another shout out. You
Okay,
ready?
I like them.
All right, Tim Savage.
Tim Savage.
One
Comment
of
below.
one of the best. Yeah, Tim Savage. Please comment. He will. He's so great. Tim is like such an incredible human. He called my cell phone the other day when I posted about my dog being sick, just to check in on me. Like, he's just years later, he's just still such an incredible friend. But so Tim found me on LinkedIn and he was like, "Hey, a little birdie tells me you might be looking for a new role," and I was like, "Okay." Yeah. So he recruited me to come work in sales operations at a company called Science.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, cool. Sales operations. I was an ops manager for the US, which basically meant optimizing processes, optimizing the tech tools that we were using, building out those dashboards to monitor productivity, figuring out operational workflows, all of that stuff. And after about a month of doing that, my boss, Michelle, I love Michelle Crocker, she was like, "Hey, I think you need to be the director of enablement at this
That's
company."
So sick. I love that for you.
She was like, you have enablement in your bones. You've basically rewrote the entire onboarding structure here, because I took a look at the onboarding structure as soon as I joined, and I was like,
Not good.
This ain't it.
Yeah.
Kids, this ain't it. So I was like, let me rewrite this, because here's the thing. Remember how I said at Lead Space, whenever I get criticism from people super high up, it would just be like, this sucks?
Yeah.
I never do that. If I look at a process and see that it's broken, I will give concrete, meaningful, specific feedback, and I'll come with a solution. I will bring a solution to the table, not just criticism.
Which is so much better. Like, no one wants a complainer, but
Right?
some people want problem solvers. So if you can add your problem solve to the complaint, it's way better.
That's way better. And the thing is, like, it won't always be well received, but at least you did your best to, like, bring a solution. So I took a look at the current onboarding, and I was like, yeah, like, I think this needs some work. Here's what I would suggest. And Michelle was like, oh, I love this, but I can't ask you to do this and your current job. I'd rather you do
You're
this.
back in your startup problem where you did 10 different things and you couldn't do them all at the same time.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. So I moved to the director of enablement role. I did that for about a year. And, you know, again, it just wasn't the best. At the end of the day, it wasn't the best fit for me. I was a global director at age, like, 25, and
A lot of pressure, like, for a 25-year-old person.
Yeah, it was a lot. And there were some other factors at play, and so I was like, you know, I'm looking for a more or less permanent home. I'm looking to settle down at a company where I will be at for at least 5 years. I can't see this company as being that for me. It doesn't mean it's not a fantastic company, but that's when I started looking for other opportunities. And Jerry actually found me on LinkedIn, so it's a great segue to kind of your next, I think, topic. He found me on LinkedIn, reached out to someone I knew at the time, a mutual connection of ours, and was like, hey, what's the deal with this Caroline girl? And the person that we both knew was like, it's funny you ask me about her because she just applied to be on a role on your team.
No way.
Yeah.
Small world.
Right? And he was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, she just applied. She has an interview with you on Monday. This was like on a Thursday. So it just is one of those, like, crazy small world things. And then about 2 weeks later, I was working at Redis.
And full circle to, like, the LinkedIn conversation. So I originally found you. I don't know if I found. I didn't find you. You were on there and stuff. I found a lot of your SDR content you were making when I was working with my SDR team, and you had some really great content. I was sending that to my team, like, hey, you guys gotta follow this person. You gotta check this out. And I think it was after, like, the first week I was following you, you put up a post that said, someone had given you some, like, negative feedback, like not even fair negative feedback about something you posted, and you were feeling like just questioning your strategy of, like, should I be building a brand on LinkedIn? Should I be putting myself out there? And I was like, I have to comment, I have to introduce myself to Caroline, because all this stuff is so good, and anyone who thinks it's not good probably doesn't know what they're doing and just is pushing their insecurities onto you.
Aw, thank you.
Building a brand on LinkedIn is not easy. Like, I've heard it described as a network of lurkers. Because if you look at the engagement on your LinkedIn right now, not yours specifically, but of average Joe's LinkedIn, it's like no likes on any of your stuff. Maybe 1 or 2 likes on things.
Yeah.
But you see it says like 3,000 impressions. Like, people are looking at it, they're just not clicking anything.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a new role, or if you're trying to expand your role, or really, like you said, a good way is to get noticed on LinkedIn, and then opportunities might present themselves. Mm-hmm. If you're an average person, like, what was your tips, and how did you get started building a LinkedIn brand to be known in the industry?
So I typically like to look at 5 key things when you're building a brand. Before you start posting, before you start building, the first thing you should look at is who do you sell to, and then who do you speak to. So those are the first 2 things. Who do you sell to is your ICP. So whatever company you work for, whatever industry you work for, think about who your ICP is and who you're going to be connected to, because you're prospecting those people. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. Who do you speak to is a little bit more nuanced. Who do you speak to involves, like, who would benefit from your content. So what I like to look at who do you speak to is, where have you succeeded the most? Where do you have the most expertise? Mm-hmm. So that's the third area that I would consider. And by the way, for anyone listening, this is like a journaling exercise. Like, when I used to do this with people that I coach, I would literally have them sit down or take a whiteboard or whatever and just, like, journal about these things.
It's really interesting. I teach people and my team to try and speak to, like, C-suite and VPs. Like, we're an enterprise sales company. But that's probably not their audience on LinkedIn. Like, CEOs are not following salespeople at companies for best CEO and practices.
No, and the thing is, if you're an SDR, you're probably speaking to other SDRs. Yeah. And so, me personally, who do I speak to? I speak to people who are breaking into tech. I speak to women in tech. I speak to new SDRs, SDRs transitioning to enablement. That's pretty much my niche, are those areas right there. So who do you sell to? Who do you speak to? And to determine that, where do you have the most experience? Like, where have you succeeded in the most? And you have to get real with yourself here, because not everyone needs to be an expert at everything.
Yeah.
That has to be, like, people have to humble themselves a little here. Like, if you were a salesperson for 3 months, you didn't close shit, you probably shouldn't be talking about how to close a deal.
And there needs to be curiosity. Like, people, I think, get so stuck in, like, I have to be an expert, I have to prescribe solutions.
Yeah.
And they lose that curiosity, and people start in a new sales role, they have a lot of success up front, and then it dwindles off and they can't figure out why.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you were so curious and didn't know anything.
Exactly.
And now you think you know something, and you're just shooting yourself in the foot by trying to prescribe problems to people. So stay curious, you know?
Stay curious. So that's so important. Who do you sell to? Who do you speak to? Where do you have expertise? And then build your network. So that's the fourth thing. Build your network with those buckets of people. People you sell to and people you speak to. Because what you just explained, going on to LinkedIn, looking at your most recent post, seeing it has 4,700 impressions and no likes, that's probably because you're mismatching who you're speaking to.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, like your network might be filled with who you sell to, awesome, but what you're posting is who you speak to, and you ain't got none of those people following you.
Great, that must be happening to me a lot.
Yeah, no, I get that. I
posted today. I needed a post today to put on LinkedIn. I had nothing. So I got an email from my credit card company about use your referral code to get points. So I was like, oh, I'll make a post about, like, I credit card travel hack. I use my work travel to get points. Then I use the points to travel for free. So I'll post about that, and then I'll put the link in for my referral. Flopped. Like, did terrible.
You know, it happens, and I'd say if you're seeing that a lot, think about continuing to build out your network with who you speak to. Because as sellers and as marketers and as enablement people, we probably have our ICP as one of the biggest majorities of our connections on LinkedIn. So go ahead and go into Sales Navigator and do the same motions you would do if you're prospecting, but for people that you speak to. So that's the fourth thing. The fifth thing is, after you've done that, after you've built out your network, you've determined what your expertise is, you've determined who you want to speak to, who you want to sell to, get consistent for like a month. You know?
Yeah, so let's talk about that more. Consistency on any social media is really hard. On LinkedIn, it's like, is it a weekday network? Do you post on the weekends? How often are you posting? Like, what's working for you?
So if I were just starting to build my brand, what I would do before I start posting anything is build up enough content to make me consistent for a month. Every single day of posting. Now, I want to caveat that with, I don't believe in the post every day mentality if you really don't feel like you have anything valuable to share, or if you're undergoing a personal emergency or need to take time off, like, please do not prioritize LinkedIn. But it's just, it's a numbers game. It's a strategy thing. If you are looking to build a brand, you need at least a month of solid content built up to start. Now, this is after you've built out your network. If you start posting before you've done that, you won't really have anyone to engage with you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
wasting all that effort of posting every day.
Exactly. You're going to see that same problem with impressions being in the thousands and likes being in the tens. You know what I mean? Yeah. So make sure that you have your network built out. Make sure that you have about a month of content built up, and fire away. See how that works for you. Backload some content. Like, do that, you know, on a Sunday night every week. I usually create content for the week. Haven't really been great about that recently because I've just been so busy, but like, that's typically kind of my go-to.
And what are we posting about? I think you do a really nice job of balancing like professional stuff that you post with personal stuff that you post, or at least it's like you at a work event, so it's a little more personal. I think some people get mad at people who post on LinkedIn things. They're like, this is a business network.
Yeah, just
everyone's got an opinion, you know? So like, what's your strategy between, like, how do you balance the personal, the professional? Is there a balance, or do you just kind of got to put yourself out there and hope it works?
Yeah, I mean, I don't sell to people anymore. I do have a network comprised of my previous ICPs and kind of a little bit of Redis's current ICP, just because some of those people actually just find me and assume I'm an SDR at Redis, so they reach out to me on LinkedIn. But I would say for that mix there, it's like if I were still a seller, like let's say I was still an SDR, I would be posting a lot more about what Redis does and how we do it, because I'd probably be connected with far more of our ICP. I don't think it's like, it doesn't have to be a clean split of like a third personal, a third work, a third what my company does.
Like a chart you're checking off.
Right, like, if because that takes the fun out of it. I think if once you've determined those 5 things, I think what you can do is then say, oh, okay, so the majority of my content is going to be to people who I speak to. So the majority of that content for me is SDR tips. I speak to other SDRs. I even have the tagline SDR tips, you know, on my LinkedIn. So that's the majority of it for me. But if you're a seller, if you're a marketer, you do need to kind of socially sell, have that ICP down pat. Consider, roughly 50-50, roughly 75-25, whatever that is for you. And just make sure you're creating meaningful content for both of your audiences.
So if you're between roles and maybe you're not selling, like we're not selling product A because we don't work for a company right now.
Right.
But we're also trying to be an expert in our space or in our industry, whatever that, if we're planning on staying in that industry. How do you create content if it's not around the value your company provides? Like, is it hard to get? Would it be hard to get content if you don't have insights and things feeding you from your company?
No, tell stories about what you did that worked at that company.
Yeah,
you can still talk about it. You can still be like, yeah, so I don't work at, like, I literally posted the other day. I was like, so this picture was taken at Science's sales kickoff where I presented on this and this. Like, I still told a story about what I did at that company. You don't have to be working there anymore to share the value you brought to that establishment. But what I would say to people who are in between jobs and looking for jobs on LinkedIn, if you're looking for a job in sales or marketing, people need to know that you're able to be bold. People need to know that you're able to put yourself out there unapologetically. Why not get a little public and loud about where you want to apply, why you want to work there? If you're down to the wire at like 1 or 2 companies, why not like publicly write a prospecting email as if you already got the job and be like, hey, this is the email template that I would use if I was an SDR at Bigtincan.
That's such a cool idea.
It's
so hard to stand out, and you see like companies get thousands of applications. If you go on any of these job sites and look up, it says like 4,000 people applied.
Yeah.
How do you stand out? So that's such a cool way, and companies are looking for their names on LinkedIn. Like everyone's running social campaigns now through their companies. What a great idea.
Yeah, or like a video prospecting message, like be like, hey, I'm a job seeker, I'm Caroline. I'm not a job seeker, but if I were a job seeker, I'd be like, hey, I'm a job seeker, I'm Caroline. I want to work for Bigtincan. Here's my pitch. Post it on LinkedIn, tag the company, tag the hiring manager.
That's so cool.
You might be, like, honestly, that tactic might not work for everyone. I hope that anyone who takes this advice is successful with it. Yeah. But, like, just do your best. Like, put yourself out there. Be creative, be bold. Because, to your point, thousands of people are applying for the job that you're looking for. You need to stand out.
Yeah, I talk to my team a lot about doing things that are outside of their comfort zone, and ask, like, what happens if I piss the person off? Like, what if I was almost at the finish line and that turns them away?
Yeah.
I don't think that happens. If someone's interested in you and they see you take the extra step and post on LinkedIn, they're probably not going to go, oh, not that person
anymore. Screw that.
They're going the extra mile. We don't want people like that at our company.
And you know what? If that is what they say, you don't want to be at that company.
Yeah. So, last thing before I let you go, I want to talk about your ebook.
Yes.
I saw it's available on your LinkedIn, so if you are following Caroline on LinkedIn or if you're on there for the first time, she has some really good SDR tips, like some of the best I share with our team all the time. Check that out. Tell us about it, though. Like, what's it about?
So the first ebook that I sold is just an SDR tips ebook. It's to help people who are breaking into tech, find resources, have templates for outreach, etc. And then it's also for new SDRs. So it's kind of the folks breaking into tech and the brand new folks who are SDRs. The one I'm coming out with on Friday is my collected frameworks and templates. It's $25. It's a 50-page ebook with all of my templates and frameworks.
I gotta pause, guys. Yeah. If you don't spend $25 on this, it'll make you $25 in 2 seconds. These tips are so good. Okay.
Thank you.
Please
I really
continue.
appreciate that.
That's so good.
I'm so excited about it. So it's basically like email frameworks, cold call frameworks, organization workflow approaches that I take, and then a bunch of LinkedIn and LinkedIn Sales Navigator frameworks and workflows. So it's basically for anyone who, you can use any of these if you're at an established company with an enablement team and a management team, like you can still, like this could still be helpful for you. But this ebook is really for people who work for companies like my first couple companies where there's really no enablement team.
That's a lot of places. It seems like a lot of places are one-man or woman shops.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build this SDR framework and a new hire training program and implement tools and just have a life. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
So some of that stuff just needs to buy that stuff. It's easier that way.
Yeah, so it's $25 and you could share it with your team. I'm not going to make everyone on the team buy it. So, $25.
That's not a SaaS model. It's not $25 per user per month.
Exactly, not per seat. So, yeah, I'm hoping that people find value in it.
So what kind of things, when you're thinking about SDR world, like you were an SDR, you were highly successful there. It's a hard place to be right now. I couldn't imagine if I had to go back, start over and be an SDR and not work in an office where I could hear Barry saying this thing, and I go, oh, Barry's successful, and he says that a lot. I'm going to start saying that. What can people do working remote to upskill themselves that when they're not in that environment?
I can't stress enough that if you have a platform like Gong, Chorus, etc., you need to be reviewing top sellers calls. because that emulates the same thing, like what you're saying, like when you were in an office. So Chris DeLeon was the person who I would emulate. He's now is a super successful seller at Salesforce, but he was at B12 with me, and he was an account executive. I would literally listen to every word he said. I would make my inflection sound the same as his. So when we switched to a non-office setting, I would ask him for one-on-ones, and I would ask him to role play. And he would be the customer, I would be the,
This is going full circle to your acting background.
Right?
Like, I can sound like that.
Exactly.
That still works, I'll do that.
It's like, hey, this is Caroline over at B12, how's it going? That literally is how he would intro. And I don't know, he's like a magical human when it comes to selling. I can't even explain how good he is. Like, he was so good. And so I would listen to everything he did. We would do one-on-ones when we went remote. But when we went remote, the biggest thing for me was listen to the recordings.
Yeah.
Keep doing that. Keep listening to the recordings. Keep asking the top sellers on your team for one-on-ones and do role plays with them. You learn by doing. Like, it's great to listen to podcasts. It's great to read sales books. That's amazing. Do that on your own time, though. When you're on the clock, on the job, do it. Trial by error, listen to recordings, listen to that playlist that your manager created you of good chorus recordings or whatever. Like, just do all of that.
Yeah, all those tools, I guess, exist now in a post-COVID world where we're all working from home. Mm-hmm. It's just a different strategy. Instead of listening to someone talk live, you gotta listen to them talk on a recording.
Right.
I think that's easier, because then you can just do it whenever you're ready to do it.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, don't be afraid to Slack a recording that you just had in your global sales channel and be like, hey, any feedback?
And if it's good or bad, it's a good way to get good recognition on stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I talked to so many enablement people, even besides not thinking about SDRs, enablement in general, who it's really hard to define metrics, which something you guys talked about on your podcast last week. It's really hard to promote yourself a little bit because you're in so many different departments.
Yeah.
So that's a really good way to do it. If something really good happens, post it in some kind of like office Slack channel.
Yeah.
Like, hey, someone double check me on this. Get yourself some recognition on metrics or things that are going well or things that are going bad, just so your name's out there.
Absolutely. And it's not like, it's never going to annoy people that you're being like, hey, I just set this amazing meeting. Like, it shouldn't annoy your team if you are like, hey, here's the recording for anyone who wants to listen. Like, I thought this went pretty well. Like, that's great.
Or if you totally flub the meeting, everyone likes people that are asking for feedback, and they can implement that feedback. So nothing wrong with the good or the bad, I guess.
Exactly.
Crazy. Awesome. Well, so good to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a new role, check out our Seek, Search, Succeed guide. We'll link it in the comments below. We appreciate you so much, and we'll see everybody next time. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Bye.
Yay.